Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 9th of November 2021, and we'll be discussing the following during the course of the show. We'll begin with the in-camera briefing that was given to the parliamentarians yesterday by, of course, our military leadership, in which details were given as far as the Afghan situation is concerned. And of course, a question and answer session also ensued, in which all the different queries of the parliamentarians were well adhered to. It was an in-camera briefing, but so of course, we won't know much of the details. Nevertheless, the situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned was discussed, and it was also said that Pakistan desired a government in Afghanistan that was representative of its people and will continue all-out support for peace and stability in the country that is Afghanistan. That is going to be our leading segment. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the OIC, Pakistan and the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Our Prime Minister Imran Khan met with the OIC Special Envoy in Jammu and Kashmir, Yusuf Al-Dobe, in which he emphasized the urgent need for the organization of the Islamic countries, the human rights organizations and the international media to be allowed access to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region so that they could properly evaluate the human rights abuse that is going on in the region, and of course the violations that are also going on in the region. And of course we know that the OIC has been supporting the just cause of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir for their right to self-determination. That is going to be our second story of the day. Then we'll be talking about the 144th birth anniversary of our national poet and philosopher Dr. Allama Muhammad Iqbal. Today is his 144th birthday, and of course, what can we say about him? He is one of the reasons we are here today. He is the one who envisioned a separate homeland for the Muslims of the subcontinent. Not only was he a philosopher, but he was also a poet of repute, and of course his poems, his collections are something that are revered not only in Pakistan but across the world. This is going to be our third story. And our last story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the second anniversary of the opening of the Kartarpur Corridor. That is also happening today. It was in 2019 that due to the efforts of the current government and Prime Minister Imran Khan that this corridor was opened for the Sikhs across the world to come and of course celebrate the anniversary of their saint Baba Guru Nanak Ji. And of course it was that collective effort of the government and our Prime Minister that went into that. No benefit or loss was weighed, no deals were considered. My favorite friend, Prime Minister Imran Khan, did this for the love of God. That was the former Indian cricketer and politician Navjot Singh Sidhu, who said this in the opening of the Kartarpur Corridor exactly 2 years back. A lot of people from India came, including Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister of India as well. That is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the in-camera briefing that was given to the parliamentarians here yesterday by the military leadership. And of course the emphasis was on Afghanistan and also Pakistan's desire that Afghanistan be a representative for its people and of course continue all-out support for the people of Afghanistan. More in the following report.
Pakistan had honestly played a very positive and responsible role in the Afghan peace process to usher lasting sustainable peace in the neighbouring country. Highlighting Pakistan's relentless peace endeavours in Western neighbour, military brass briefed lawmakers of the Senate and the National Assembly. As a Parliamentary Committee on National Security convened under the chairmanship of National Assembly Speaker Asad Qaisar at the Parliament House, matters pertaining to national security, foreign affairs, as well as internal and external challenges faced by the country were also comprehensively discussed. The committee outlined Pakistan's firm belief that peace in Afghanistan would pave the way for regional peace and development. Pakistan's persistent efforts to avert humanitarian crisis and ameliorate plight of Afghans against the backdrop of uncertain circumstances of the war-ravaged country were also highlighted. As per a statement issued by the National Assembly Secretariat after the meeting, parliamentary and political leaders expressed satisfaction with Pakistan's strategy to tackle internal and external challenges. Pakistan has been raising alarm bells regarding impending humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan after hasty US withdrawal and urged the international community to engage with the interim Afghan government. Islamabad has also strived hard to convince the Taliban first for talks with the United States and then with the Afghan government.
I would discuss more about the situation in Afghanistan, the in-camera briefing, and of course a tweet that recently came to notice that Prime Minister Imran Khan has posted online. He has retweeted something from the BBC where the Executive Director of World Food Programme said that as far as the situation in Afghanistan is concerned, it is as bad as you possibly can imagine. In fact, we are now looking at the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. Javed Khan Jadoon Saab, renowned analyst, joins us online. Javed Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Javed Saab, let's begin with the in-camera briefing that was given to the parliamentarians. Of course, there are issues that we do not know about because it was an in-camera briefing, but what we do know, as per the statement that came out from the National Assembly, was that the situation in Afghanistan was discussed and Pakistan's efforts as far as Afghanistan is concerned. How important is that in your point of view?
Thank you very much, Omar. I think, Omar, much is happening around Pakistan, particularly whatever is happening in Afghanistan. There is a government, but government has not been recognized by the global community because of certain reasons that there should be an inclusive government in Afghanistan. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, because Afghanistan is our immediate neighbor, and any destabilization in that war-ravaged country, which has now come out of the internecine warfare and the conflict which lasted more than 20 years, and hundreds of thousands of people were affected, killed and injured. So it is Pakistan which is very adversely affected whenever there is destabilization in Afghanistan. So I think that is the very reason that the military and the political leadership briefed the National Assembly on the evolving situation in Afghanistan. And I think they, as per the statement issued, a very brief statement issued after the briefing,
from the National
states
Assembly
that
Secretariat.
Secretariat says that the focus was on Afghanistan, and military leadership briefed them that Pakistan would like to support and facilitate the government over there, but having said that, they re-emphasized the inclusive government and the human catastrophe which is unfolding over there because of lack of funds.
And that is also what is evident in the tweet that Prime Minister Imran Khan has posted right now. And of course, he retweets something from the BBC that quotes the Executive Director of the World Food Programme, David Beasley, who talks very candidly about the situation in Afghanistan. Now, not only was Afghanistan discussed, but as per this statement that was issued, there was a briefing about matters pertaining to national security, foreign affairs, and internal and external challenges. How much of that do you feel is related to the current situation in Afghanistan?
I think, Omar, when we talk about the foreign policy, of course, the other foreign policy paradigm is India and the situation in occupied Kashmir, because India has been a constant threat to Pakistan's security and stability. It has been involved in Balochistan in its subversive activities. India has been supporting, financing and facilitating terrorism in Pakistan. So of course, whatever the latest the DG ISI or the military leadership had to share with the parliament, they must have shared. And they talked about the situation in Afghanistan as well. And I think the other important policy plank could be relations with the USA, because USA has been our friend, very long-lasting friendship has been there. Geostrategic politics requires that Pakistan must be friendly with the United States of America. Though blow hot, blow cold relations have been between Washington and Islamabad. But despite the fact, as America is the sole superpower and is a major power broker in the region as well, so I think Pakistan's ties with America and the future of US-Pakistan relations must have been discussed and briefed over there.
All right.
National security, you rightly pointed out. National security, I think definitely
and when it pertains to national security, there are so many issues, whether it be across the border infiltration, whether it be the incursions that are happening, whether it be the internal issues that are happening as well that lead to certain confrontations and instability in the country, that is, whether it be perpetrated by internal factors or external factors. That is very important for the parliamentarians to understand the whole concept, and their reaction is also very important because it's nevertheless a democracy, isn't it?
Absolutely, Omar, because Pakistan, a nation of over 200 million people, a nuclear state, and a very responsible member of the global community, definitely needs to make major strides as far as economy is concerned. And economic growth and development, Omar, is not possible without internal stability, internal security, and internal political stabilization as well. So I think it is very imperative on part of the political parties as well, because they are the major players. Today, PTI is in power. Tomorrow, some other party could be in power. So every major political party and even the minor regional political parties have a stake in Pakistan.
Need to be taken into confidence.
I think that was a very, very right move on part of the civilian and military leadership to take them into confidence, because if you don't brief them, many conspiracy theories start circulating about every issue. For example, the latest issue of TLP and many other issues which Pakistan is confronting today. I think political leadership and the military leadership, when they sit together, they can chart out a course which
exactly.
is
and it's very important for everybody to be on the same page when it comes to internal security and external security of our country.
And Omar, I think Parliament, as we know, that is a sovereign institution, is the ultimate representative body of the people of Pakistan. And that is the forum and the platform which has to formulate every policy, whether that be the national security policy or the foreign policy or the political economic policies as well. So I think going there and briefing them, as the whole Parliament was converted into a committee, it was the hall of the National Assembly where they sat together.
Exactly, and I think there was a question and answer session after that as well.
Of course, I think 5-6 hours they spent together, and there were, I believe, candid kind of question answer session as well.
In in-camera briefing, you can do that because, of course, it remains between the parliamentarians and the military leadership. So whatever needs to be said can be said in a very candid and an open manner.
Omar, absolutely, because instead of going to the media and talking about the sensitive national policy issues on media platforms, I think that was the right platform where you can ask questions and you can be answered as well. And I'm very confident that the political leadership must have been satisfied whatever briefing they were given over there, because when the meeting is in camera, one can understand that every sensitive issue was discussed and every question was asked and every question was answered as well.
All right. When it comes to Afghanistan, one of the part of the statements that was taken out by the National Assembly Secretariat was that it was hoped that the territory of Afghanistan will not be used against Pakistan. There are these aspersions because we have seen the across the border infiltration that has happened, those attacks that have happened in the last few weeks. How important is also for Pakistan and Afghanistan to be on the same page? We know there is a certain intensity of contacts between the two countries. We also know that there will be frequent goings and coming-ins, whether it be from the Pakistani side or the Afghan side, and understanding each other in a better fashion. Do you feel Afghanistan can control such incursions that have been happening, whether it be through the TTP, whether it be through other parties or the IS even?
Omar, that's a very, very important dimension, because Pakistan had serious concerns about the kind of infiltration which took place when Ghani government was there, and we know that India had a very strong foothold over there, very strong footprints. They sponsored, they financed, and they trained as well the terrorists, which the terrorism was taking place in Pakistan. And almost in every major terrorist attack in Pakistan, we found out that Indian footprints were definitely there. So once now India is gone, the other major threat Pakistan faces is the TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Because there are areas, Omar, you and me, we both know that.
But there's a certain ceasefire, isn't there? There are talks that are going on between the government
Yes,
and
of course. There are talks are going on, but I think it's a long way to go, Omar, because the TTP, it's basically its leadership is basically based in Afghanistan on the border areas with Pakistan. And I think Pakistan has been voicing its concern that Afghan soil, Afghan territory must not be allowed to be used against Pakistan, because we know that there were only two major threats, Indian threat and the TTP, because Pakistani people suffered a lot.
There's also the threat by the IS, more or less.
Absolutely. It is an emerging threat now. It wasn't there, but since the coming into power of the Taliban, we have seen a series of suicide attacks taking place in several major cities of Afghanistan. So I think as far as IS is concerned, Omar, it's not only Pakistan. In fact, all the regional countries which are bordering Afghanistan, they're very concerned about that. And as we know that a meeting took place in Moscow as well. And the major thrust of that meeting was how to contain, to stem the tide of IS in Afghanistan, because of course, Taliban have now really not the kind of a government. They do not have a regular army as of now. They do not have the regular police as of now. They were a guerrilla force. They have come into power. Now they are trying to get in terms with the situation, emerging situation in Afghanistan.
All right, let's talk about the emerging situation in Afghanistan. Javed Khan Jadoon Saab, there is a humanitarian crisis, a looming humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, and that is what our Prime Minister has been saying time and again. That is what our Foreign Minister has been saying time and again. To this date, no tangible aid has really reached Afghanistan as we speak. Now, that is why our Prime Minister also retweeted the BBC and, of course, the quote of David Beasley. Now, if the humanitarian aid does not reach in time, that will lead to another crisis in the country, an internal strife. Will that have a trickling effect in Pakistan? Are we ready for that?
Absolutely, because we know that the winter is setting in over there as a very, very harsh winter. And if the international aid doesn't arrive on time, I think the pressure would be on Pakistan, because we know that our brothers and sisters, if they're in need, like the Prime Minister said, Prime Minister even pointed out the harshness of the winter over there, and he said that his concerns were vindicated by the World Food Programme as well. So I think it is about time that if you don't want to recognize the Taliban government,
but at least give them
why
food,
not
at least give them the aid so that they can survive.
Because they have to survive as a nation, they have to survive as the people. And we know that they have been suffering the conflict for the last 20 years. And coming out of that conflict, and now you're facing the situation where there's a famine, not enough food for the people, currency definitely devaluating. And to add insult to injury, there are about $9 to $10 billion have been frozen in international banks, that they're not being released. So I think the hardships the people of Afghanistan are going to face, I think global community must take into consideration those hardships.
The Prime Minister said it's a moral responsibility, obligation of the international community to avert this humanitarian disaster confronting Afghan people. Is the world morally responsible enough to confront this before it's too late?
Omar, look at what happened when the Soviets were there. The whole Western world, the so-called the free world, they joined hands to defeat the Soviet Union. Once the Soviet Union was defeated, they left the region high and dry, and they never came back. And then again, after the 9/11, they came back into the region, occupied Afghanistan, fought the conflict for 20 years, and once again cut loose and run from there. It is, I think, their primary responsibility, because every kind of devastation which took place in Afghanistan was because of that conflict, because of the war fought between the allied forces and the Taliban. Now, since they have left the region, they have left Afghanistan, why not engage with the people of Afghanistan, provide them all the humanitarian assistance, provide them medicines and food and shelter? This is what they need. I think a global community really can't absolve itself from the responsibility of providing assistance to the people of Afghanistan. It is an unfolding tragedy over there, Omar. And the coming month, which is the December, one of the harshest months of the winter in Afghanistan, where we see that even the snow starts falling in many parts of Afghanistan, and life becomes more and more difficult for them.
And that difficulty might lead to other conflicts, internal conflicts, that could have a devastating effect on the current situation in Afghanistan as we speak, and that will have an effect on the other countries in the region as well.
At least right now we have some kind of a semblance of stability because of Taliban.
Of course.
But if Taliban are discredited because of the doings of the global community, and the people start agitating because of the hardships, and if there is no central authority in Kabul, you're very right that internecine warfare which took place in the 90s and the 80s as well, which really devastated the entire country. There was no infrastructure, no building left standing, and now at least there's a government, not maybe recognized by the global community, but there's a government, there's an authority over there. They can literally maintain peace and stability. But if they are put into a situation where there's a trust deficit between the Taliban government and the people of Afghanistan, this is going to be a real cause of concern for the global community as well.
All right. Now, finally, coming of the opposition and the government together to understand the different paradigms of internal and external security of Pakistan and be briefed concisely and openly and candidly by the military leadership, and then have the question and answer session. How important is it also to pave the way, as the National Assembly statement said, for harmony and unanimity of views on national issues?
I think this is extremely important, Omar, because the political, as I earlier mentioned, that the major political leadership of Pakistan is a stakeholder in country's economic and political future and its national security as well. They really can't stand outside the parameters and start alleging that whatever is happening there is because of the PTI government. No, it is not. I think there are accumulative problems, and these problems have been there even in the last 20, 25 years. I mean, whenever there's a government, difficulties were there, shortage
and it is with the consensus of the government, the opposition, and all the different elements of the administration that are present there, that the government can move forward, that the country can move forward in a positive and a harmonious manner. And that is the need of the hour, given into place all the issues that plague Pakistan internally and externally, and that are evident to Pakistan as well.
I think, Umar, the endeavor and part of the military leadership was basically you can play out your political differences with the PTI government. There's no problem with that.
Of course.
But as far as national security issues are concerned, you have to have a kind of a consensus that you need to sit together, you need to talk to each other, and this is what they did over there. And I think ultimately it is going to help the relevant quarters to formulate whatever kind of policy they would like to formulate.
Relevant policy is very important, and unanimity of view on issues of national security is also very important. That is why such briefings are held. Thank you very much, Javed Khan Jadoon Sahab, to have talked to us about this important in-camera briefing as well as the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan's point of view on that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's come to our second segment, and that concerns, of course, Kashmir, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan and OIC's role. Our Prime Minister met with the OIC Special Envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, Yusuf Al-Dobe, and of course, important matters to discuss, especially concerning Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. More in the following report.
The Pakistan OIC bonhomie endured the ebbs and flows of global politics, but fluctuating international developments further cemented Islamabad's integration in the representative forum of the Islamic world. Reaffirming its enduring commitment to outstanding issues of Islamic world, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation stridently backed the Kashmir cause. In order to show solidarity with Pakistan over the Kashmir dispute, Ambassador Yusuf Al-Dobe, the special envoy of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in Jammu and Kashmir, arrived in the federal capital on a 6-day visit. OIC Kashmir envoy Al-Dobe, along with OIC's Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Ambassador Tariq Bakhet, and other senior officials, held talks with the Pakistani officials and Kashmiri leaders, besides meeting the victims of the Indian violations on the line of control ceasefire. Premier Imran Khan also met with the OIC delegation and underscored the urgent need to allow access to the OIC, UN, and other human rights organizations, international media, to visit Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to conduct independent investigations into and reporting upon human rights abuses. Eulogizing OIC's principled position on the Kashmir dispute, Prime Minister Khan advocated the resolute support of the Islamic Ummah to the just struggle of Kashmiri people in their quest for their inalienable right to self-determination. Marking a diplomatic offensive, OIC had extended long-standing support for the right to self-determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir in accordance with the UN Security Council resolutions. It's pertinent to mention here that the OIC contact group on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir was formed in 1994 to coordinate the OIC policy on the occupied valley, and since then the Islamic Alliance has played an important role in steering the organization's principled position on this issue.
I will talk more about the issue of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan's resolve, as well as the OIC's backing for the support of a just resolution of this dispute. We've been joined by Dr. Manzoor Afridi, who is a leading analyst. Thank you very much, Dr. Afridi, to have joined us. Dr. Afridi, the OIC's role is extremely important under these circumstances when we see that there are so many United Nations resolutions and none have really translated into any kind of action as far as the disputed region is concerned. Do you feel in this current situation the OIC could pave the way for some kind of resolution?
Well, OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, it is the main body of the Muslim countries around the globe, and it came into being in emergency situation. I mean, the conflict situation when there was the Al-Aqsa Mosque issue between the Arab states, I mean the Muslims and the Israelis. So if we talk about the Kashmir issue, it is also a conflict, and there is also emergency situation over there, especially since the 5th August 2019. So in this context, of course, it is on the table and agenda of the OIC. Kashmir conflict is there, and already the OIC has a contact group on OIC.
On Kashmir.
On Kashmir. So the role what it had to play on it, so unfortunately it was not played there in history, but now it is high time for them.
Has it become proactive now?
Yes, now since the government policies, and now as the Kashmir issue has been highlighted more and more, so now OIC is also a kind of active in this regard to highlight and to put pressure on India. As your question is concerned, of course, it can play a role, especially now in this world where the policies, they are mainly revolve around the economies. So economic relationship is very important. So these OIC countries, or OIC as an organization, of course, it can build pressure
because Dr.
on India.
Yes, Dr. Saab, when you talk of pressure on India, there's also the fact that India has a strong relationship with a lot of the countries that form part of the OIC. So there could be a certain pressure or maybe insinuation that could be given to India that it needs to kind of put its house in order, especially when it comes to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do you think, Manzoor Afridi Saab, that can happen? And if so, what should be the way to pave it forward?
Of course, possible, but if the parameters or the factors, especially the global politics, if they are suitable or they are in line with this situation, if OIC takes any kind of such strict action or build a pressure on India. For example, if really there is a need for Afghanistan, these Muslim countries to join together, or OIC as a platform, it can play a role. Or if there is some kind of, the US interest is there in South Asia, which is always there, and the US relationship with the Muslim countries, especially the main players of the OIC, such as Saudi Arabia or Iran or Qatar or Egypt or Pakistan, Malaysia, these countries are really important, and their policies, their relationship with the United States. So these things matter. So if they join together in a way which favors the agenda and the policy of OIC regarding Kashmir, then it can work.
Now, Dr. Manzoor Afridi, remember in the past also a lot of so-called foreign diplomats were given a tour of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and of course everything was shown to be hunky-dory, nothing wrong was happening, and of course they came back, and then that whole issue was also criticized by Pakistan because of the fact that the real situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is not shown. Now, when our Prime Minister says to Yusuf Al-Dube, who is a special representative of the OIC, and he says that the OIC and the other humanitarian agencies need to be given access to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. When the UN MOGIP has not yet been given access to the region, do you feel that the OIC can exert enough pressure so as to gain access to the region?
In this situation, if we see, you rightly said that even the military observer groups from the United Nations, they were not allowed and were not given access by the Indian government. And a lot of international organizations, the media outlets, they are not allowed to visit and to report in a transparent way what is going on there. So in this situation, it is very difficult, of course, that OIC can penetrate there or to have free and fair reporting of the human rights violations carried out by the Indian military. And this is the biggest military zone in the world, that there are more than 900,000 soldiers are there. And it is not now, so since the 1988, 89 it is there. But yes, since 5th August 2019 and some 200,000 soldiers, they are increased in Indian occupied field. But with the passage of time, with the some concrete policy adopted by the Muslim countries bilaterally with India and also through the platform of OIC, it can build pressure.
All right. Also, there is a need for bringing humanitarian assistance to the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. That was also reiterated by a Prime Minister when he talked to Mr. Yusuf Al Dube. Do you feel that can also happen?
Yes, of course, it is the...
When you are, I mean, I'm just saying that in perspective because, you know, the fact is that the held region is some kind of a sub-jail in which so many people are not given their due rights. There was clamping of internet, there was a time when there were basic facilities were not being provided in the right manner and so on and so forth, and then the incarcerations and so on. I mean, there are so many horror stories when we look at what's happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Do you feel humanitarian aid can reach the region?
It's very difficult, but as far as the humanitarian assistance concerned or its essence is concerned, so if you look into the history, especially the recent Cold War between the US and USSR, so when there was a kind of conflict, civil war, or a natural disaster in the countries allied with either with USSR or with the US. So even the opponent group or the superpower, they had to send its humanitarian assistance regardless of the ideology or the camp what that country joined. So in this case, of course, India has no right to stop it, but it will create problems and hurdles in the way that the situation is better, or I'm responsible for delivering these services, food package or any kind of humanitarian assistance to the Kashmiri people. Possible, but difficult, as India want to hide its face, its the real.
That's a very good point that you say hide its face. That is what it did when it took the diplomats to the Indian illegally occupied region. Will that or could that happen if, for example, tomorrow it lets an OIC delegation enter the held region, and there also all is well kind of an image is shown, and you know nothing concrete, nothing what is actually happening in the region is I mean given to or shown to the people. Do you feel that, I mean, that could lead to or that would lead to some kind of positive development, or I mean I don't understand, because there are a lot of, you know, question marks that come to mind when it comes to the held region and what needs to be done.
Well, if it is a dictation from the Indian government, or these media channels or such kind of international human rights groups or OIC, if it is there, the delegation of OIC is there in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir region, but if it is under the control of India, of course it will just show the positive face, and if they are not allowed to have their own independent reporting, so those will not be satisfied, and of course the world knows that what is going there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, but of course, what we cannot deny is the fact that Pakistan has been really making a lot of efforts, a lot of strides in order to back I mean the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in a moral, in a political, in a diplomatic manner, to highlight their situation at all the different fora, whether it be our Prime Minister, Foreign Minister and all the other leaders. We've been talking on and on about it. I just hope, Dr. Saab, that the world and the OIC also puts and exerts the right amount of pressure on other countries, on India specifically, so that some kind of respite can come to those people. At least give them the right to self-determination. Let them decide what they want to do with their lives. Only then maybe they will heave a sigh of relief.
Yes, what we have problems in South Asia. So here, of course, India and Pakistan, they are the main players or the biggest countries in South Asia. So if we have problems here in this region, political, religious, economic, culture, most of them, they are because of Kashmir issue.
And that needs to be resolved. If that is resolved, then peace will prevail in the region. Thank you very much, Dr. Manzoor Afridi Saab, leading analyst, to have joined us and to have talked to us about, of course, the meeting between the OIC Special Representative Yusuf Al Dube and our Prime Minister. And of course, he's here. He also met with other leaders, also with the leaders of the APHC, in which he has talked about the backing of the OIC as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us very quickly to the last two stories of the day. The first is, of course, the 144th birth anniversary of our leading poet, national poet, philosopher, Dr. Allama Muhammad Iqbal. More in the following report.
True universal heroes rise from humble beginnings to make a universal impact as visionaries for all times. Allama Muhammad Iqbal was one such hero who was born on the 9th of November 1877 in Sialkot and died on the 21st of April 1938, a few years before the making of Pakistan. Despite reaching such great heights in his lifetime and posthumously that led him to be perceived as a national hero with such grand stature and titles, Iqbal came from a very humble background. Most students would struggle with one degree at a prestigious university, but Iqbal in the same year in 1907 also undertook a PhD in Germany at the Faculty of Philosophy at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. Iqbal, standing firmly on the ground of being Muslim and drawing inspiration from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he engages intellectually with ideas from various faiths, wisdoms and philosophies. Having been through the process of lapidary, where Iqbal was interacting with Eastern and Western religions and philosophies, he developed an overwhelming sense of identity and awareness. On his return to subcontinent, then today's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan and so forth, he saw how members of his own faith community lacked vision, confidence, education and know-how. There are 5 qualities that Allama Iqbal wanted the future generations to develop within them, which are also the qualities of a Shaheen. These qualities are relevant to individuals but also very relevant to the development of a nation. Buland Parvaz, fly high and think big, long-term thinking, plan ahead. Tez Nigah, develop a sharp vision is important. Khalwat Pasand, meditate, reflect, pray, ponder, think, ideally in quiet spaces or in the place of prayer, the Jainamaz. Ashiana, develop your own home, your community, develop good relations with neighbors far and wide in the world. Today we can learn from their method of being inclusive, creative, empathetic, open-minded, forgiving, hardworking and valuable global citizens, drawing from the ocean of knowledge from whichever source it is found.
And our final story, of course, is the second anniversary of the Kartarpur Corridor that was opened on this very day 2 years back due to the efforts of our Prime Minister Imran Khan and the government of Pakistan that led to the Sikhs across the world and especially in India to visit the Gurdwara Darbar Sahib in Pakistan, and that was of course a few days before the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. This time also Pakistan will be allowing around 3,000 Sikh pilgrims to enter Pakistan and to attend the birth celebrations of Baba Guru Nanak. This is a huge development since the last 2 years to let the Sikh community across the world to enter Pakistan and to of course visit this community, and it is all due to the efforts of the government and Prime Minister Imran Khan, and we hope that this corridor reopens again. Because of COVID it had been closed some time back. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new segments, new stories that matter to you, to us, to Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs and get yourselves vaccinated. Allah Hafiz.